Vinsmoke Sanji is an integral member of the Straw Hat Pirates. Beyond his literal top 1 culinary skill, he's also a top 3 combatant on the crew, behind his captain, and competing with a swordsman. The last 4 words I just said probably initiated a response by a certain group of people, and there's a reason for that. So in today's video, we'll talk about the potential change for that. What's up guys, Gamblrr here, and in today's video, you saw the title and the thumbnail. Today is all about Sanji and Conquerors Haki. I hope you actually watched the entire video. I know some people are judging it just off the thumbnail already, but if you enjoy it, make sure to like, subscribe, and of course, watch until the end. I like to start off by saying that I've never actually made a video like this before. Back in like 2021, I used to be an avid supporter of the Sanji Conquerors Haki agenda. Heck, my entire TikTok was that for a period of time. But I fell off the agenda because I felt that Sanji just didn't need the power up. It was actually feeling like a thing I wanted for Sanji just because Zoro had it, but in reality, Oda still has them competing despite Zoro having the higher Haki feats. I'm still on the same camp. I don't care if Sanji actually gets Conquerors Haki or not, because Sanji can still hang with the big boys without it. Oda will find a way regardless. Anyways, this video isn't about me saying Sanji won't get it. It's quite the opposite, to be honest. I want to go over literally everything that has to do with Sanji's Conquerors Haki and why he could get it, because as a huge Sanji glazer, you know I have to make a chapter that doesn't even feature him about him. So let's get into it, starting off with one of the biggest things on the contrary, Sanji's lack of willpower. I had to get through this first because it might be one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. There's of course things people point to that I will go into in a second, but even the idea of Sanji being weak-willed just doesn't make sense to me. Sanji's literal first backstory was him showcasing insane will. Remember that when Zoro was to be executed by Helmeppo, he hadn't eaten in like 9 days, and it would have been a month straight if it weren't for Luffy. Luffy heard this and told bro that he couldn't even last a week without food, and guess what Zoro says in response? I have more willpower than you, that's why I can last longer. Do we really believe that? Well, but Sanji outperformed both of them as a literal 10-year-old. Sanji lost his last piece of food, a moldy bread, on day 25 and survived for 60 days until day 85 when someone came to save them. There's a lot to be said about this flashback, and it's going to be my literal go-to for this video because for some reason Zoro fans, and yes it is the Zoro fans, they don't seem to be able to read the story in the slightest. Completely off topic, but I was arguing with this guy about how Zoro is very terribly handled when it comes to women. I've seen people say that he's insanely misogynistic, and to be honest, I don't really disagree with that. But I had a guy tell me that Zoro isn't because of his fight with Monet. I went to go reread literally 2 chapters of the fight, and we see Zoro holding back for no reason except because, guess what? She's a woman. And then the scene that they all referred to, him cutting her, he didn't even finish her off. Reminder that Monet would have killed everyone on the island if it weren't for Law, who took her heart. All because Zoro viewed women as inferior, something explicitly stated. Topic for another video, but again, the reason I brought this up is because the problems with Sanji's Conquerors Haki according to these guys are just a matter of reading comprehension. So let's get into the first and most prominent. Zoro meets Mihawk at the Baratier and challenges him to a duel as to accomplish his life's goal, becoming the world's strongest swordsman. Zoro was obviously outclassed. At that point, Zoro hadn't even been able to cut iron, let alone use any form of Haki. And so he took what seemed to be a killing blow from Mihawk and was thrown overboard. Sanji, looking at this fight, was confused about why Zoro went about it the way he did. He said that Zoro never even had a chance, but he'd rather die than give up. Then he yells out that it's easy, just throw away your stupid dream. This is the quote that has every Zoro fan creaming their pants, and again, I wouldn't blame them because they don't know how to read, but I'll explain it in detail to help you understand. During this moment, Sanji thinks back to his first ever interaction with Zoro, something super important. Before they started fighting the Dawn Creek pirates, Gin tells the Straw Hats that they were wiped out by Mihawk. Zoro heard this and says that he will find him and defeat him, but Sanji in response says that they're all fools running to get killed. Zoro says that might be true, but only he can excel himself, because as soon as he decided he was going to be the world's strongest swordsman, that was the day he gave himself up for dead. It's either he achieves his goals or he dies. There's no in between. Again, with no reading comprehension, that would be a bad look for Sanji, but if you go to literally the next page, you see Sanji call them stupid again, but Zeph laughing. The reason Zeph is laughing is because he's watching Sanji call other people stupid for something he did all those years ago. At the beginning of Sanji's backstory, we see a little kid rambling on about his dream to find the all blue, and the other cook saying it's a fairy tale. Right after, Zeph, when he was a pirate, invades the ship they were on, and Sanji with full conviction asserts that he won't die on a ship like this. And so he comes out on smoke telling them that he'll kill them before they kill him, and Zeph kicks the crap out of him. Sanji crawls up to Zeph even after the attack and bites his leg, saying that one day he's going to find the all blue. This is the guy with weak will, by the way, the one rambling on about his dream and having it as a reason he just can't die right there and then. This guy. The point of the backstory is to show how Sanji's viewpoint was changed and nurtured differently by the sacrifice made for him. Zeph gave up his leg, directly ending his pirate career and ending his dream for Sanji, but all Sanji saw was Zeph giving up his leg to survive, and so this changed the way Sanji went about things. After all, being with the same guy for 9 years and vowing that you'd stay with him until you died does that to you. That was the point. We see why Sanji has such a terrible mindset, but we also see, which is the most important realization, that Sanji had the same will and conviction as the other Straw Hats. It's just been held back for literally no reason. Why do you guys think Mihawk fought Zoro in Baratie of all places? Oda could have very easily put Mihawk at the entrance of the Grand Line and had him fight there, but no, it was during the Baratie arc in front of Sanji. It was to show us that the thing Sanji was criticizing, the undying desire and will to achieve one's dream, was something Sanji possessed before he put it aside for a one-sided promise. It may sound like I'm yapping on right now with no evidence, so let's get into the actual narrative during the arc. Luffy attacks Don Krieg through his spiky armor and declares he won't give up until he beats him. Sanji and Zeph watch the fight, with Zeph telling him to observe closely. Luffy breaks through literally everything Krieg tries to use against him, but Sanji keeps saying that Krieg just has too much. Zeph responds saying that even a man holding the most powerful of weapons can be skewered by the spear of blind grit. What he's trying to say is that in the end, it's not about weapons because grit counts more than steel. Luffy continues fighting even after getting gassed out, and Sanji standing there astonished on why and how he keeps fighting, but again, is due to his grit. Now we get into the most important 2 pages of the chapter. If the ragtag fleet of Krieg says military might, and his fancy weapons are military might, then that kid's grit is military might as well. But I know a fool who's chewing a spear of his own for no good reason. Sanji is the fool he's referring to. When Zeph saw him insult Zoro, he was remembering the kid who was literally doing the exact same thing all those years ago. He's chewing on his own spear of grit for the reason of repaying his debt to Zeph, a terrible reason according to everyone around him. So no, Sanji saying this doesn't prove anything, because Sanji at his core is literally just like Zoro and Luffy. He'd put his life on the line for his dream. It was just that he'd put it aside for a terrible reason, a moment he completely misread. Another reason people doubt Sanji's ability, or rather his chance of being a conquerors Haki user, is his lack of, in quotations, kingly ambition. To be honest, this kinda plays into what I just talked about, but let's just get into why this is a whole bunch of BS. There are about 22 confirmed conquerors Haki users, and so let's look into the, in quotations, ambition that they all possess, because clearly all their ambition has to be overwhelmingly kingly compared to Sanji's. Shanks is a weird one. He doesn't do anything literally the entire story, at least from the orientation of ambition. Shanks only showed any kind of ambition when he told Ben that he'd go for the One Piece when he found out Luffy was officially a Yonko. Before that, he was just a guy who doesn't get into fights for no reason, so he doesn't really help the anti-Sanji conquerors Haki agenda. Luffy is one of the most ambitious in the series, so not much to say about him. Zoro as well, he wants to be the world's strongest swordsman and put his life on the line for that. Rayleigh? He's a conquerors Haki user because he just is one. We know nothing about his ambitions, and we know for a fact that he wasn't like Zoro in the sense that he had his own aspirations before he joined Roger. In fact, the guy was literally chilling on a random boat he stole before meeting Roger. Boa Hancock is a conqueror as well, and not from ambition. Again, Boa is the leader of her entire island. She has the disposition to lead, but the ambition that Sanji supposedly needs just isn't there. I think you can see how this is going. I assume I don't have to go over all 22 conquerors Haki users to prove my point. So before we close out this section, we can talk about Whitebeard. Whitebeard is a conqueror and one of the strongest we've ever seen, and his grand ambition, wait for it, is to have a family. You don't need some kingly ambition to be a conqueror. You just need the disposition of a king and something else I'll go into in a second. Okay, so Sanji does have willpower and he doesn't need to have a kingly ambition, but what about him being a glorified slave? There are people who unironically use this as a sign that Sanji can't be a conqueror because when Oda decides to use a gag, Sanji says he's Nami's slave. I don't really have to go into detail on why this is ridiculous, but something I want to know is that this can fall under another point, Sanji's subservience. There's an assumption that Sanji isn't a leader and is just some glorified servant or subordinate. While yes, Sanji isn't the captain of the Straw Hat Pirates, him not being the captain means nothing when it comes to his chances of having conquerors Haki. Kaido, Big Mom, Whitebeard, Odin, they were all crew members and not the captain, and all of them minus maybe Whitebeard weren't in the secondary role like a vice captain. Ace is like the biggest example here. I think we can all agree that Ace has strong will, and I can give that to Sanji as well. His ambition though was to make someone else king. Not himself, but someone else. And then on top of that, he was in quotations, subordinate. But that boy had conquerors Haki like no other. Also, it's kind of funny that Sanji gets flagged for not being a captain when he's literally the only Straw Hat to rename the ship and lead as captain. Don't forget the Twirly Hat Pirates. Alright, I couldn't really find more things Zoro fans use to say Sanji can't get conquerors Haki, so let's go into canonical reasons for a character to have conquerors Haki and see if Sanji is a match for any if all of the requirements. When Rayleigh informs Luffy about Haki, he gives us a full explanation of conquerors. The power to overwhelm, the color of the Supreme King. Most people who've made a name for themselves in this world possess this power. He goes on to mention about the way to train it, but that doesn't really matter here because the main thing is the mention of people who have made a name for themselves. The funny thing about this is that I've seen people literally only use this to prove Sanji will have it, and to be honest, I literally can't blame them. When One Piece characters talk about legends, what are the names they spout out? Roger, Whitebeard, Garp, Sengoku, Odin, Rayleigh, all these guys are mentioned, and funnily enough, they literally all have conquerors Haki. Dude, Sengoku hadn't even been shown fighting at all, and Oda just gave him conquerors Haki. It's almost as if, again, he's making a correlation between those held as the strongest and those with conquerors Haki. I think this also might be the reason the Gorosei all have the Supreme King Haki, and then Gaban's just out here flexing it as well. More on him in a second. Now, unlike Luffy and Zoro, Sanji isn't 100% guaranteed to be a top tier because unlike them, his dream isn't really strength oriented, but the way Sanji is being portrayed and what I personally see for Sanji's future, I think it could definitely happen. Remember during Thriller Bark when Kuma pulled up and was terrorizing the Straw Hats and only the two strongest crew members, Zoro and Sanji, were up after the explosion? Sanji offered his head to Kuma because he claimed that if he didn't kill him right there and then, he'd become the world government's biggest problem. I don't see this as a complete lie, to be honest. Obviously there will be bigger threats like Luffy and Blackbeard, but Sanji, even while again not even being combat oriented, is a billion berry bounty man. He's literally a cook. It makes the conversation very odd, but Gaban is most likely a conqueror and he's got it, so I won't put it too far past him. Only time will tell though. Every other canon reason for having conquerors Haki say something about being chosen and being born a king, These are obviously just insanely vague, and I can't judge Sanji based off those unquantifiable metrics, so let's get into what made me want to make this video. Skipper Gaban was the left hand of the Pirate King during his reign. He was one of Roger's 2 good men. He and Rayleigh led the rest of the crew, and he was so strong he was grouped up with his captain and fellow crew member. Before being introduced into the current story, we knew Gaban was like the Sanji of the crew. We knew Rayleigh was the Zoro, but the other guy who's standing shoulder to shoulder with him was another formidable pirate. Once introduced, one of the first things we find out is his personality, and Oda makes it very apparent that he's meant to be Sanji's parallel. How, you ask? By literally having Luffy say it. Again, I think it was pretty clear before, but once Oda dropped that line, it was set in stone. The reason Gaban is so important to this conversation is because of that. He's the parallel of Sanji, and so the assumption is that he's basically Sanji's floor. Whatever this guy can do, Sanji's expected to do the same and then some. This is why everyone was hoping he'd have conquerors Haki, because if he did, Sanji's conquerors Haki stocks go up. Both Roger and Rayleigh had conquerors Haki, and both of their parallels, Luffy and Zoro, unlocked it. It's just a matter of figuring out if Gaban having it indirectly proves Sanji will get it. I don't see a reason to disagree with this line of thinking, to be honest, unless Oda comes up with something new to make Sanji progress in strength. I think just giving him the top tier path with conquerors Haki would be the next thing. Right now in the manga, Skipper is falling into the underworld where Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji are. Chopper is chasing behind him, so we know Gaban won't die, but the reason Chopper is following him is important. Chopper watched as Gaban butchered the crap out of Summers and halted the regeneration he had, and so he wanted to know what was it that allowed him to do that. I'm gonna be real, there's zero reason in my mind Chopper is going to be out here learning Haki on a whim. I think it might have to do with conquerors Haki, but something beyond that. Unless Luffy has like bottom 1 battle IQ, we know he used advanced conquerors Haki on the Gurusei on Egghead. If not, you're admitting that Luffy's dumbass allowed Saturn to go and kill Vegapunk, which we know he didn't mean to happen. I don't see a reality where Sanji's going to be sitting there being left out of the loop for getting past Imu's regeneration while Zoro and Luffy, the conquerors of the crew, unlock it. I think with him knowing Nami and Robin's in trouble and with the imminent danger everyone's in, he could unlock it somehow. I'm not much of a theorist, clearly I can't even think of a clever way to give conquerors Haki to Sanji, but what I will say is that Sanji has more of a chance of getting it now than ever. So what did you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.